which applies to me also, is freedom or the cessation of war or violence or conflict. And I get to thinking about that, and I woke up this morning. I was blessed with a whole night's sleep, which doesn't happen too often. And I was warm enough, I was still enough, and I was just blessed with peaceful sleep. But I woke up remembering that I had just had a dream. And lo and behold, it was a food dream. And I'm like, oh no, how am I going to tell anybody? How am I going to... And it was something that I was making something for my son. And I was fixing it up, and it was beautiful, and then I realized I was cutting him a piece, but I realized there was a piece gone. And I said, did I eat that? And he said, yeah. And I said, but I didn't even taste it. How could I have eaten it? And I'm like, okay. And then I was conscious enough that I could remember, oh, thank you, God, that was only a dream. And then I was back to my peaceful state. And for me, that's peace. That was a war with food. That was a war with my inner violence, whatever goes on. It gave me tranquility again, so I was able to lay there and meditate for some time. And so I was real grateful for that. I came into program over 13 and a half years ago, blessed with abstinence from the third day I was here. And I am a full-service sponsor. I'm maintaining an 85-pound weight release in my top weight. And I had to think when I started with I started right away and started with step 1. And it was, I write them down so I get them exactly right. My memory is almost 75 years old, so it suffers. I admitted I was powerless over food. And I was like, I need to lose a lot of weight, but, I don't know what that means, but I'll do it. And what amazed me is when I walked into my first meeting, I was told, you will weigh and measure, you will do this, you'll call your sponsor every day, you'll write a question every day, you'll make phone calls. And I had vowed I would never weigh and measure food after the last commercial diet I was on. And I said, okay, someone, the higher power that I wasn't acquainted with at the time was there working within me, saying, you will do it because I want you to, or some reason. There was some reason he said do it. And I was willing. I was blessed with willingness. And I wasn't even going to tell my husband about what I was doing because, I'd be going to a meeting every week, because we only had one face-to-face meeting. And I thought he wouldn't trust me if I didn't tell him where I was going every Thursday night. And so he's not so negative. I figured he would just, start being the pessimist again. And he didn't say any words. He doesn't say too much anyhow. But he was just very quiet about it. And he watched me. I knew he was watching me. Because then he started to tease me. That I was weighing, I had a jeweler scale for my food. And I was weighing down to the 100th of an ounce. And he would tease me about that. And I'm like, so what? And it got to the point, I had to reason, why am I doing this? Because I can. I have to do it. Otherwise, I heard today say a sliver, a slice, a slab, that's where I would go. It has to be exact for me. It can be a little bit under, but it can never be over. But I was willing to take that first step. And I did whatever I needed to do to get through with my questions every day, calling my sponsor. And step 2 came along. I was willing to admit that there's a power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. And I figured out what sanity was when they told me it's doing the same thing every day, over and over, expecting the same results. It doesn't happen that way. I need to do something different. And this was totally different. I had never heard of 12-step for food, even though I down deep knew I was a food addict. And then I realized that there was a higher power. When someone said, and I started losing my weight, someone said, "Boy, you have such willpower." And it just came out of my mouth, "No, I have a higher power." Because I knew it wasn't me. That was the first time I outwardly admitted that I wasn't doing this. And I knew there was a power greater than myself. And then after I was in program about 3 years, I had gone to an assembly in Las Vegas, and the theme was surrender. And after listening to all the shares and all the workshops, and I still have recordings of all those workshops, I walked out of there totally surrendered to the God of my understanding. And I was able to turn my life and my will over to God that weekend. And that's why one of the reasons that I come to assemblies. They're a little different than conventions for me. They are much more personal. It's a smaller group. We all know each other so well. And the ones we didn't know, we've met today. And it's just been such a blessing. So that's when I officially took step 3, that I was able to admit I had searched for.
Yes, you got 8 minutes after.
I grew up going to a church as a child, and I had a higher power that children have, and that was fine. And my life went into a total chaos, or whatever. I lost my mom when I was 9, and then my dad remarried, and we were dragged to church every Sunday, and during the week for choir practice, and then youth group Sunday night and everything. And I kind of got to like that because it was an escape. It was a sanctuary. It was a safe place where the violence and whatever in my life didn't affect me there. So that's why I went to church. But I still knew there was something there. And I searched. And after I was an adult and I left home and I got married, I searched for that power greater than myself, that higher power. And it wasn't until I was introduced to 12-step that I thought, I may have found it, but I wasn't sure. And it took me another 3 years to find that higher power. And I am so grateful. And that's why today, that's been my pathway. And that's why today I can find peace. I can find peace in my home. It may not be the best marriage in the world, but it's peaceful. And this is something I need. I need quiet. I need peace. It's interesting how that, when things get really chaotic and loud, I get PTSD. And so we had a cat that used to irritate my husband. We still have the cat, but I asked him, please don't yell at her, because he yelled at her like the yelling I was used to hearing. And I explained to him, not in great detail, but I just said, please don't do that because it really sets me off. And he accepted that. May not understand, but he accepted. And for that I'm grateful. And that's why I have peace in my home. I have peace in my fellowships. I mean, this fellowship is my family and friends. I don't have a relationship with any of my family the way I do with you folks. And there may be somebody I just met. I mean, there's a few people here that I've never seen face to face, that I talk to all the time. And, it's just wonderful meeting you. It's wonderful seeing those of you that I've met before, and we still talk during the year, and just have such a wonderful, wonderful time. And there's so much love in this room. I'm just so grateful. And the other area of peace is in my heart. And, I'm just filled with gratitude. I have my ups and downs. I've had my turmoils, but I know that God is with me all the time. I mean, he's been so active in my life. I keep very busy. Just the miracles that occur in my life are incredible. When something happens, I say, "Oh, that's just God hitting me over the head with a 2x4 to wake me up." One time he stuck his foot out and he tripped me and I fell flat on my face, literally. And that's when they found the brain tumor. And then he put the doctor in my path that I knew from my past because I was a nurse in a neurosurgical unit. And I knew this gentleman when he was a resident. And he did my surgery. And I just knew that God was with me all the time because he set this all up to happen. And the last thing I said before they put me to sleep for that surgery was, "Hey guys, the big guy's watching you, so be good." And I had such peace with all of that. Even when I fell, I just knew, I just was able to be calm. And I had my 8-year-old granddaughter with me, and she was terrified. I was babysitting, and the paramedics were wonderful with her, and I was just at peace, and that was the amazing part. And like I said, I'm just so grateful, and that's how I got through steps 1, 2, and 3. And now I'm anxious to see how other folks are getting through the rest of them. Thanks for letting me share. Thanks for being here today.
My name is Terry D. I'm from Dallas, and
Hi, Terry.
my abstinence date in Cea-How is July 2nd, 2000, and my life in these last 18 years has been exponentially more amazing than my life was the 51 years. I'm 69, so whatever the math is. But all the other years before that, and it's a miracle. I know it's a miracle, and I know it because of my own experience. But what makes it even more joyful for me is when I sponsor someone and I watch them go from that place of hopelessness and pain and start to get a twinkle in their eye and start to have hope and start to smile a little bit and start to open up and begin to interact with us and join us. And I agree with what Jan said. Our fellowship is a beautiful, wonderful compilation of people who are all doing the same thing for the same reasons, and we're not doing it separately, individually. We love each other, and we're there for each other, and we're cheerleaders for each other. And it's a friendship, group fellowship, unlike any I have in my life. Of course, other than my husband and I, but it's different than and there's nothing more joyful for me than to be with the girls and Richard. Richard is awesome, and I love the men that are in our program, and it's wonderful to have them. But it's miraculous for me because I come into the rooms and I think I'm so terminally unique and have all this stuff that no one would understand, and we all have it, and it makes that opportunity to see myself in a different light and to accept myself possible, because sitting in a vacuum, I can't do that. My first 4th step, I was scared, I was full of fear, I didn't want to do it, I was resistant, and I wondered if it would really even be worth my time to do this thing. The lady who was my first sponsor is in this room, and I knew that if I didn't tell her it was worth my time to do it, that I would be, and that's why I love her, because she's strong and she's just able to motivate me, and she loves me, and she knows the things about me that and so I was willing to jump in, willing to do it. I have to say that the inventory in the beginning was hard, but what it did was it opened me up to why the pain was inside of me, what the pain was from, what caused it, and it gave me great hope as I worked the steps that I didn't have to have that pain sitting there and live that way. And a good deal of my pain came from some family sexual abuse, and it was devastating. And I came from a large family of a Catholic family of 10 kids, and it just wasn't safe to be able to talk about it. When I tell my mom that I thought that it had happened, she just went so ballistic that I closed down and assumed I was the wrong one. So that wound is one that I never thought would heal. And I finally, I don't know how many years it took me, a lot of years, but I had an opportunity when my father passed away. We were living, they lived in Chicago and we lived in Dallas, and I have a wonderful husband who's very supportive and very understanding. But that first night when I knew that my father was passed, and I love him, I was over all of that stuff, I had forgiven him, but it was the first night that we could open the windows in the bedroom and have the screens up and I could have the air coming to the house. I was that afraid of not being safe. And so the fourth step was really, really a huge blessing for me. And then moving on to the fifth step was great because I got to sit down with my sponsor and go over my questions one at a time and get some feedback. And oftentimes her feedback and her viewpoint were so much gentler and more loving than I was to myself. So, but she did tell me that when we were going to be embarking on this fifth and sixth step, that I ought to get some kind of a real love bug thing that reminded me of my higher power. And so I got this little monkey with really soft hair and he has a little bear on the side says love with an arrow through it. And so every time I would write my questions or do anything about my fourth, fifth, or sixth step, this little guy would be sitting right next to me. And I still keep him in our bedroom. And it surprised me how much that helped me when I was just needing to have something to touch that grounded me in love and truth and support. My life is so full today, so different than it was back in those days, and I never thought that I would ever be healed of that. I was scared to tell anybody, but in Cea-How, I was able to tell my sponsor, and then there are meetings where that comes up, and I know that I'm not the only one, and that gives me a chance then to support and walk with others who have been in the same situation. I also am very grateful for many of the safe men that are in the rooms that I'm in. They're wonderful friends, and they're good men, and I'm not afraid of them. And that is a gift, a huge gift that I needed in order to help me continue to heal. So what I found in just now, I'm going to kind of go into a little of the specifics. Doing the fourth step was not real easy to do the first time, but I found it to be so helpful to get that kind of churning feeling, gnawing, aching feeling out of the pit of my stomach and onto a piece of paper and look at it objectively. And so the fourth step was really a wonderful opportunity for me to be objective about what the questions were asking and to look at what's my part in it. And the fifth step, I was not looking forward to doing that, but again, my sponsor was so beautiful, so wonderful, so loving, so accepting, and I never felt threatened, I never felt ashamed or had fear that if I say this, then I'm going to get this kind of a reaction. And I think that's also one of the more amazing gifts that this program gives us, is we come in not knowing anything about how these steps really work. And then the steps are worked on us, and we feel them and we experience them. And that's the way that I was taught how to take what was given and pass it on to the people that I sponsor. So the whole opportunity of that being cleansed, being given a whole new inner being, a whole new outlook on life, a whole new self-acceptance. And I look at my situation of having those gifts given to me, how it also affected my relationship with my higher power. And my higher power is, for me, a Trinitarian God, a Father, Son, and a Holy Spirit. And I was on a special 8-day silent retreat where you meet with your spiritual director once a day and for an hour, and then the rest of the time you're in scripture and in meditation and walking in beautiful areas. And he started out the first day and he said, "So, tell me about your relationship with God." And I just started to cry, and I couldn't stop crying, and I was sobbing, and he just was sitting back. He was a young guy and a nice guy, and he kind of just looked at me, and he said, you just don't understand, do you?" And I'm like, "I understand what?" And he said, "How precious you are." And I'm like, "No." And he said, "If you had any idea how much God loves you, you would just be amazed." And he asked me what my relationship was with God, and I said, "Well, I'm okay with Jesus. I think that's great. I can really relate with the Son. And the Holy Spirit is way cool. I like that. That's just a tremendous gift. But God the Father scares me, and it's the Father part of my childhood." And so he helped me to get on a path. What he did that day is he said, "Would you be willing to picture yourself sitting next to God the Father? And you picture him any way you want to picture him." And so he said, "Close your eyes and do that." And I pictured this white hair, long hair, and this man, but I felt like he was safe. I felt like he was safe. And then Father Joe said, "Now, if you would just picture yourself at any age in your life." And I pictured myself I could remember at 3 years old, I had a really pretty pink cotton dress that was all ironed and pretty, and I had my hair fixed up, and I pictured that. And he said, "Now, if you think it's safe, I want you to just climb up into God's lap and just sit there and let him put his arm around you." And so I was able emotionally to do that. And that was just, that was a release of so much. It was finding my new father, the spirit of my new father, and being open to that. And I had always had a trust relationship with Jesus as Son and the Holy Spirit, but I just couldn't make that leap with God as my Father. And now today, all of that is gone. And that's all because of program. And what later, after I got home and talked with my husband about it, he understood all of it. He was so kind and loving and gentle. And I said, "You know what I realized? That dress and that age, that was the age that I was abused. And I can remember I can remember it. And so the whole way that it was revealed to me was so healing and was so beautiful and done in such a context that I didn't have any guilt about it. I could finally let go of all the guilt that I carried that really wasn't mine to carry. What I've learned is that some of my best prayer is to just sit, close my eyes, breathe deeply, relax, and let God love me. And just sit there, allowing that love and soaking that love in. And it's a beautiful gift that this program has given me, that sitting quietly and listening that being human and recognizing that all of who we are we're created by God. God created me to be this individual, as He did each one of us. And so He knows my hurts, He knows my joy, and He loves me unconditionally. It's always the safe place to go. It's always the place where the answers are. And I believe with my whole heart and soul that this is a spiritual, emotional, and physical program. And I think that when we can mix those three in balance that way and live all three parts of what this program gives us, we have a balance that's not available any place else that I know of. You, my friends, you, my sisters and brothers on the journey, you are Cea-How to me. You're the face of my higher power. When we laugh together, when we tease each other together, when we cry together, when we listen to each other's question, and we work on presentations, and we give talks, and we do fun things together. That, for me, is the family that God has given me. That's the group of sisters and brothers that God said, Terry, these are your brothers and sisters. This is your family. And I want you to have the healing that is available to you. And I've been healed through all of the rooms that I've been in and all of the people that have been in my life. I came in here to lose weight. I've been given a whole new life, a whole new family, a whole new spirituality, and a love for my food plan. And by the grace of my higher power, one day at a time, this is my normal now. This is how I live every day. And it's a gift that surpasses any other gift that I know. So thank you all for being part of my healing, part of my recovery, part of my sisterhood and my brotherhood, and for being with me on the road to happy destiny. I love you and I'm glad to be with you.
Good afternoon, I'm Linda, gratefully staying Kyle's mother. So we've been on a journey already, very quick, but at the time we're going through it, it's not so quick.
No.
And it's not without pain. So when I went through, I thought, when I arrived at Cea-How, I didn't know what a 12-step program was, but I knew when I walked in that I was accepted with such warmth and love that whatever they were doing, I wanted to do. And so I had no earthly idea what the steps were. I had no earthly idea what writing was going to be all about. And somebody finally told me, well, you're going to be in the coffin and you'll still be writing. And I guess that's probably true. But, I remember it just question after question on that fourth step and answering those. And my sponsor is a good friend. And so she had asked me, would I be willing to let somebody else do my fourth and fifth step with me, because she wanted me to really explore, and so I did. But it was just such a loving relationship with a lady in California who took my fourth. I did my fourth step and then gave it to her. Every Saturday we had time to set up, and I would go over the questions that I had answered. But then it was out of that step 6 that I started to see that there are some things about me that are going to have to be given up. And how is that going to happen? Because to tell you the truth, I really didn't know what humility was. I thought, I remember seeing a girl in my high school who I thought she was the epitome of what I thought humility was. She was kind and gentle and meek, and everyone loved her, and I wanted to be like her. Well, she was the daughter of a Methodist minister, so I thought, well, cross that one off. That's not going to happen in my life. So when I got to the 7th step, it says, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. It means I had to learn what humility was, and that was, thinking about, could I really look at myself as I truly was? And when I decided that was what I wanted to do, then I knew that I had to think about living differently, because it says that He's going to remove the shortcomings and not me. And what I have found out, and I'm a work in progress, you guys. I've been through all the steps, but I kind of circle back around the wagons. And what I have found is that I had to really start looking at what my purpose in life was in order to really wrap my brain around humbly asking Him to remove my shortcomings, because I was well aware of what they were. Let's see. I was very fearful. Very self-righteous, a huge inflated ego, and I loved to be in control and play God. And if you can think of that person, and yet that same person had deep feelings of inferiority. I don't know how that works. How can you be such a combination of all of that? So I really, each and every day, I go to my Creator and I ask Him to remove my shortcomings. He makes the decisions, and it's on His timetable, not mine. But here's the deal about my God. He has been meeting me where I am, and that's exactly what He does for all of us. He meets us right where we are. I was filled so much with pride because I felt like, well, surely I didn't have that much that I had to deal with, although I just told you all those things, but surely they weren't all that bad, because after all, I was a church-going lady. In fact, when I was single, one gentleman that I dated, I ended up having a class at the University of Oklahoma when I was working on advanced hours, and the lady sitting behind me, we were introducing ourselves in the class, and the lady sitting behind me, I turned around to look at her, and she said, "You're a church lady." And I wasn't quite sure how to take that. And it was just earlier this weekend while we've been here, somebody said, "Church lady." But see, that's how I've been raised. You go to church, you participate in church, you do what you're supposed to do. But what you have is that good-looking mask on the outside. And if anybody ever took off my mask, they would see the real me, because I wanted to be in control of everything. Ask my children. So I had a great deal of fear, and I had tried my way, and it just wasn't working. Even though I'd surrendered back there on all those other steps, I could still take that back on any given day. And so I think the beauty of the 7th step prayer helps me to be grounded, to know humility and how to accept it. So why don't we just bow and say that together? My Creator, I'm now willing that You should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that You remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to You and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do Your bidding. Amen. Now, nowhere in that prayer does it talk about getting what I want, making a decision about which defects of character or which shortcomings I have that I want to say, okay, well, today I want You to remove whatever, I had been very afraid to give God my husband, my children, and then when grandchildren came along, that was the ultimate. To give God my grandchildren. I waited so long to get them. And, gracious, I can't turn them over. Well, you know what? All of those that I've mentioned were His before they were ever mine. And the beautiful thing is, I am His, and He loves me. And, but what I I've had to really work to know that I have to go to Him and ask Him to remove my shortcomings. And through that, I found out I hadn't given in me. I'd gone through a lot of steps, but my doggone rebellion kept me from still wanting to have it all. You know, gals and guys, I'm a work in progress. Thank you that I am. And most of the time that when I have pain in my life, other than physical pain, but when I have pain in my life, it's because I brought it on myself. I haven't been willing to turn my will over to God. And so today I know that each day I humbly go before Him and ask Him, please help me to remove my shortcomings so that I can be useful to you in this world, because that's why we're here. That's that purpose. I finally figured it out. That purpose is not for me to grab all of life with the greatest gusto that I can. It's to be of service to Him, to be His eyes, hands, feet, voice, love in this world. So I know that today, I know what I want for my life, and I know the shortcomings that keep me from getting that. And you know, I'm not promised in this life that I might lose all those shortcomings, but I am promised that He will make the decision, and on His timetable, I will be released from my life. So when I think about step 8, that moves me into yet a different arena. That step 7 kind of finishes up what was going on just personally. But then step 8 moves me out away from myself to be working with my fellows. So, and you know, I am the type of person that, well, let's just get it all done all in one fell swoop, you know, and then we'll move on. But when it's so distinctly broken down so that it's not so overwhelming, but, you know, I could make anything overwhelming. I guess that's my perfectionism, I don't know, but it just says to make a list of people you've harmed and to become willing to make amends to them. It doesn't say that I have to go out right then and do it. It says I just got to make a list. So I had to stop and think, well, what is harm? Well, harm is really when instincts collide, and that's where we get that physical harm or that mental harm or that emotional or that spiritual harm. And so that caused me to have to go back and look at step 4. And maybe some of those old wounds were now going to have to be reopened, because as I was working through step 4 and then with step 5 with my sponsors, we were exploring some of those things. She would gently remind me, now, this is a person, this is an institution, whatever. And so on this step, all I had to remember to do was just make that list. That's all I have to do. This step is about forgiveness. And once again, fear crops up. I think fear is my biggest shortcoming, and I deal with it a lot. But it's so much better than it used to be. Just the thought of going to someone and standing there face to face and admitting my poor behavior, my poor decisions, and how I had hurt someone else, that was very difficult for me. And again, that stubborn pride and procrastination would creep up and get in the way. And this program for me is about surrender, 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 and surrender some more. Because that's the only thing that helps me on a daily basis to overcome my fear and my anxiety. So then I had to think about, okay, well, who have I been angry with? When did I let my temper get out of control? Being vengeful, being selfish, jealousy. That's one of my real big shortcomings, because it's back to that, all those steps prior to step 8 where I was able to identify. I thought I was here on this earth to gain as much security that I could, to gain as much prestige as I could, and to be loved and to love somebody else. Really, I wanted them to love me more than I loved them, to be very honest with you. I think that was something that was really lacking in me. And so I made some very inappropriate and poor decisions when it came to, finding somebody to love me. And the one thing that I have found out is that God loves me. And that's the one that I want to have love me more than anybody else. So those hardest amends will always be to my family. And I will never forget my daughter said, as I was thinking about who I need to make amends to, I knew that I had some institutions I needed to make amends to, and I knew that I had some financial obligations that, I had to see through that, and some people in my life. But boy, when it came to my children, I'll never forget, my daughter said, "Oh yeah, I remember what we had to do." I said, "Like, what do you mean what you had to do?" "Well, when you came home from work, Mom, you always had to see if there were stripes in the carpet." And I said, "Stripes in the carpet? What are you talking about?" "Where the vacuum sweeper wheels ran." And that's how I would know if they had done what I had asked them to do. And it's funny how they carry those kinds of wounds that I can go back and say, well, you don't have to make stripes in the carpet today. But it's that I have these beautiful grandchildren now that God has given me another opportunity. So with this, I just have to be willing to make that list. My step 8 is an ongoing, and it carries through to a step 10. But, even though I've done all my step work, I will still have something come up and pop up in my mind, and I'll think, I need to make an amends. Holy smokes. And so when we think about making those amends in step 9s, it's about being prepared. It's about using good judgment. It's about thinking about timing. It's about having courage. It's about being prudent. And those amends actually fall into about 4 categories. Those that you need to deal with immediately. So, I need to say, Suzanne, I'm so sorry that, I don't know, your mom was just crazy as a balloon. I don't know what to say, Sweetheart, I would never want you to have stripes in the carpet, especially with my own granddaughter. Please don't do that to her. Because, those things that have happened to us, we just have a tendency to pass on to our own children. I had to think about making restitution. I had to go through a bankruptcy when I was divorced. And so I had to think about making restitution for that. Sometimes you have to defer them for a while. And I'll stop in just one second. I saw my ex-husband last weekend at a birthday party for one of my grandchildren. And I'd kind of been convicted to think, I probably need to talk with him and say to him, I'm sorry for anything that I did to cause the demise of our marriage. Because, for a long time it was like, you dirty scoundrel, you know what you did. And but there's 2 people who create a marriage. There's 2 people who end it also. But it's been almost 30 years. It has been 30 years. But pardon me, when I saw him last weekend, remember I said it's about using good judgment, and timing is everything. I just was not there yet to say, I'm sorry. But I know I've surrendered that to God, and I know that in His timetable it will happen. So, and just by the very nature of those who have gone on before me to their heavenly reward, I can't make amends to them. But I can be a better person than I was before, and that's what I strive to be. Thank you.
I'm Deanna, compulsive eater.
Hi, Deanna.
And thank you for the panel, whoever invited me to do this. This is my first assembly. And I just, wanted to be of service, and all of a sudden I get an email, and this is what I'm doing. So I'm honored to be up here with these ladies, and just reflecting on it is a pathway to peace and it's a journey to peace, and it's clear-cut directions on how to get there. And I've been looking for that my whole life. There's no doubt about that. So I was thinking about step 10 and 11 and 12. I have released 60 pounds. My abstinent date is July the 18th of 2015. I am a food and an inventory and a step sponsor. And, I looked at my book with the steps in 10, 11, and 12, and I did that, and I read those questions to my sponsor. So I had been involved in another 12-step program for quite a while, and so that's kind of my base, that's how I do 10 and 11, 12, and that's what I'll share with you today, is how I keep current in my life. I don't go back over those questions every, day, but it gives me clear-cut directions in our literature and the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, I just, every day when I wake up in the morning, I'll preface this by saying, by the time I got to step 10, I had done a lot of work, and these ladies just went over that. I had done a lot of work. A lot of things had been revealed. I knew what my character defects were. I had made direct amends, and I made living amends. And my slate was clean, and I was free for the first time. I wasn't carrying that baggage that I carried my whole life. And step 10, I was told, is the now step. It's the right here, right now. I know it when I am out of sorts and out of alignment with my Creator. I feel it. I'm uncomfortable in my own mind. When I go to bed at night, I'm still thinking about it. So it's the right here, right now step, for me. And I'm just going to read a little bit, and then I'll share a little bit on what these things mean to me. So it says, this step brings us to step 10, or this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living. As we clean up the past, we have entered the world of the Spirit. And right there, that caught my attention. We entered the world of the Spirit. I was asked to contemplate that and see what that means for me. What does that mean to me at this point in my life, that I've entered the world of the Spirit? And what it means to me today is what I see isn't necessarily reality according to what I think about it. That there's something greater going on than what I'm seeing. And it's when I get caught up in personalities and people, places, things, it's what I think about it that's the problem. And so, it says right after that that our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. So first I'm realizing that what I see is not exactly reality, but it's asking me to start seeking of how to, grow into an understanding and effectiveness of this God consciousness with a power greater than myself. And it says this is not an overnight matter. I love how just, you're not going to get all this right now, right? It's going to be, it's not an overnight matter. And then it says it's going to continue for my lifetime. My sponsor, she passed, but she would always say, we're standing in the big room of improvement. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be standing there till the day they plant us. And right after my father died, she was telling me that story again. And she said, Deanne, do you know what the room of improvement is called? And I said, what? And she said, love. And so it should continue for my lifetime. And it says, I'm going to need to continue, Deanne, I like to put it in first person. Deanne is going to need to continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And when these crop up, it doesn't say if they crop up, it says when they crop up, that I'm going to need to ask God to remove them and to discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly. And, that's why my little thing up here went to sponsorship. I mean, I call my sponsor every day, and my outreach calls are not where I've done better some days than others, trust me. But I do talk to my sponsor every day, and all my friends are in the fellowship of the Spirit, so I run things by people, throughout the day, and because again, I feel it in my spirit. Interactions at work, interactions with my family. I don't like leaving things unresolved, And so I usually will talk to somebody right away, and I'll go back and I'll make amends if I need to, or I'll ask for clarification. I've had to do that a lot in my work lately. This is what I heard you say. Is this what you meant? I've had to go back to people in my life and clarify that, because just because I think you said that may have been way off what you meant to say in the first place. So having those vulnerable conversations, and sometimes uncomfortable conversations, I'm finding that is my responsibility. Assumptions are a good place for me to go. I need to ask for clarification. And then I need to turn my thoughts to someone I can help, for love and tolerance of others is my code. And then I love this next part. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol or food or myself. My sponsor reminded me, we cease fighting ourselves too. For this time, sanity has been returned. We will seldom be interested in food or alcohol. If tempted, we will recoil from it as from a hot flame. Back in step like 1 or 2 and more about alcoholism, where there is a solution. It talks about a stove, and that we put our hand on the hot stove every time. There's a hot flame, there's some food, whatever, I'm going to eat it every time. I'm not going to have that defense not to do that. And by doing steps, 3 through 10, I've built a defense. Now I have a power greater than myself that can stand between me and whatever poison I'm going to put into my body. And I can recoil from it as from a hot flame. And then it goes on to say that I've been restored to sanity. I will react. We will see that my new attitude towards liquor has been given me without any thought or effort on my part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. I am not fighting it, or am I avoiding it. I feel as though I've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. I have not even sworn it off. Instead, the problem has been removed. And I was told that is the great promise, of these 12-step programs, is that we can recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. I can be restored to sanity. The problem has been removed. I don't crave sugar and flour today. The only time I think about it really isn't when I'm on a phone bridge meeting or at this. We're talking about it. But that is contingent. It says it does not exist for us. We are neither cocky or afraid. That is our experience. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. It's contingent on that. That is my defense. So fear, resentment, selfishness, those are symptoms of my illness. Irritable, restlessness, discontent, these are symptoms of my illness that I need to check myself right away, like now. And then it goes on, and it says, and I've done this, it's easy to let up on my spiritual program of action and rest on my laurels. I'm headed for trouble if I do. For alcoholism, food addiction is a subtle foe. I am not cured of food addiction. What I really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. Every day is a day when I must carry the vision of God's will into all of my activities. All of my activities. I can't pick and choose. It has to be all of them. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. Much has already been said about receiving experience, strength, or inspiration, direction from God who has all power. If I have carefully followed directions, I have begun to sense the flow of God into me. To some extent, I have become God conscious. I have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. And then it says, but we must go further, and that means more action. And then it goes into prayer and meditation. And before it even talks about, the act of sitting and praying and meditating, it begins with when I retire at night. And it asks me the same questions that it asked me 2 pages ago. That's how important it is. If I miss it during the day, it asks me again to look at it at night. And I was told that we constructively review our day. That means we write it on paper. And that these are questions and that I'm supposed to answer them. So I have a notebook, that I ask myself every day, was I resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? If there's a pattern of resentful, if I'm at resentments and fear, it's like my time limit for pain is very short these days. If it goes on for maybe even a day or two, I'm going back to step 4. And I'm writing out an inventory, a resentment or fear inventory. Because resentment and fear, if I'm carrying those, it affects every relationship I have, including first and foremost, my relationship with me and my God, and then with me and me, and then with me and you. And it says it's the number 1 offender, resentment, that it kills more of us than anything else. Not food, resentment. And so I write those things out, and I'm very conscious. It says, have I kept something to myself which should be discussed with somebody at once? I just discussed something with somebody a while ago. I just learned something about sausage. And I had no idea. I was like, oh my God. Anyway, was I kind and loving towards all? And the word is all. My sponsor had me underline it, circle it, highlight it. She said, it's not, was I kind and loving to you, but it's all. And if I wasn't, why not? Why wasn't I kind and loving? What could I have done better? Was I thinking of myself most of the time? Or was I thinking of what I could do for others, of what I could pack into the stream of life? And then it says, it's so gentle, I just love these words, but we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. We make our review and ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. And then it goes right into telling me, in the morning, how to start my day. And these pages, and I'm reading from 85, 86, 87, and 88, they become a prayer for me. It's like, we say, if you want what we have and you're willing to go, I want what this has. And I was told anytime it says ask, it's a prayer. And so these pages have become a prayer for me. In the morning, I just say, God, I'm thinking about my 24 hours ahead. Help me consider my plans for the day. And God, help me direct my thinking. I pray that it will be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, God, help me employ my mental faculties with assurance and use the brains that you've given me to use. Place my thought life on a higher plane and clear my thinking of wrong motives. And then it tells me what to do in between, in the days to pause when agitated or doubtful. And that I be shown all through the day. That I be given, it says we conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what my next step is to be, and that I be given whatever I need to take care of such problems. And then it says, we're going to ask our family or friends to join us in the prayer and the meditation in the morning. And it says, go and seek direction. And I have come into a way of meditation that works for me, but what I want to tell you is there are many ways, and many books and many authors. I want what they have too. And I've become a seeker, and I have found one that works for me. And so I participate in that, and I practice that. I have my own practice that I practice every day. Step 12, and I'll wrap this up, which is appropriate. I don't have any sponsors in Cea-How yet. I've had them. I had some the first year, and I don't know how to turn it off. I had some the first year, and some of the people in this room kind of know what my last 2 or 3 years have looked like. I've had a lot of deaths in my family, divorce, changes in my life, and I don't know, you know, I had like 2 or 3 sponsees and then they would go back out and relapse and then I wouldn't hear from them anymore, to be honest with you. And I was told you don't chase people down. If they want what you have, they'll do what you do. And so I just recently started making myself available to sponsor people and, you know, Cea-How and being willing to do that. So again, I'm a food inventory and STEP sponsor, and I am available. And thank you for letting me share.
I just want to thank everybody that is on the panel and all of you for being here with us. And I'd love to close with a prayer. If we can make a big circle around the room. I offer myself to thee, to deal with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I love, of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Amen. Keep coming back. Work.